Justinian deception, hidden foreign text known as Dog Latin, the mother of all deceptions, the concept of modern-day slavery. By Romley Stewart. This article is not legal advice in any way. It is a story in relation to research and findings that have been uncovered in relation to such research directed at the grammatical appearance and the grammatical standing of government, or what could be foreign de facto governments, court and banking contracts and charges. This article hopefully may alert some of you to the dangers of entering into contracts when you are not aware of the importance of the grammatical appearance of the languages employed within such contracting paper instruments. Is the legal title you hold really saying what you assumed it to say? An account of grammatical crimes of corporate governance, courts and enforcement agencies by the use of Dog Latin, a debased criminal immoral foreign written language that renders all such Dog Latin documents, tendered by such corporate private governments, as counterfeit. Dog Latin is unhyphenated all uppercase Latin symbolic text that follows the grammatical rules of English and not the grammatical rules of Latin. It is the language of the illiterate. Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. It looks just like English, it looks just like this, but grammatically, it is the deception right under your nose. It is the poison in the text, it is the corruption in the contract. If you hold any part of this debased criminal all uppercase text of the dead corporations, such as your driver license, you are claiming membership to the underworld, criminal counterfeit, corrupt, corporate world of the dead corporations. You become a criminal. The presumption of a foreign military occupation of our country under the foreign control of Rome. In 1973, Whitlam, Prime Minister of Australia, signed us up to a private military contracting system of governance called UIDROA, head office in Rome. This is why the written language and its relationship to private contracts is so important to be aware of. The United States, being the de facto government of the United States of America, is now also a part of UIDROA, under the power of Rome. Dog Latin, debased Latin, appears to be the language of the infants, infantry of Rome. It appears to be the language of the dead, debtor, and the only way you can hold a military name is in the all uppercase appearance of the dead language, Latin and or Dog Latin, being the designation of things and not proper names, such as your surname. Proper Latin appears to be the official language of Rome, and we assume that Dog Latin, debased Latin, is the language of the military debtor accounts / ledgers of Rome, and a lack of understanding of such facts may be the cause of many Australians and people from around the world to be losing their property and all their common law birthrights via lack of understanding in relation to the appearance of such Latin text and its dogged corruption. The beast is the Vatican, and the mark of the beast is its written text. Preamble: a simple question about the validity of the Queensland driver license appearing in an all uppercase text was never answered by a Queensland magistrate, 2010, causing such research to be undertaken to understand how a government can take your $30,000 car and never return it. How did they do it? Stolen by a massive grammatical corruption. This article is the result of over 7 years of research in relation to 3 questions that were put to Magistrate Pida, Queensland, Australia, in 2010, relating to the validity of the Queensland driver license. And such a deception now extending to many governmental instruments. The 3 questions were: 1. Why is the name on the driver license back to front, with the last name first? And 2. What is the all uppercase text, because it does not appear to be any correct form of English text in relation to the Oxford English Styles Manual, and 3. What Styles Manual did you use in order to construct the Queensland driver license with the name appearing in all uppercase text? Such questions caused an estoppel in the court because the magistrate refused to answer the questions, and the police were warned by Magistrate Pida to never touch me again. A vendetta has been carried out ever since by state police. This research was undertaken in order to find the answers to such questions that all magistrates refused to answer. This article is a disturbing account to what has been uncovered in relation to such 3 questions. The government is nothing what you ever assumed. This is not legal advice, it is just an account of the research that may have uncovered what appears to be the underlying facts about why magistrates could not answer such questions for fear of exposing the truth about the grammatical standing, or lack thereof, of international foreign corporate maritime law governance overruling the sovereignty of our common law birthright to our own countries. The grammatical deception uncovered by this research may very well be hundreds of years old, Justinian, 530–560 AD, and may even be a surviving system from the Egyptian masters of slavery and symbolism themselves, being thousands of years old. The Egyptian system of the gods of the dead such as Osiris, Anubis, Horus, and the like, may still rule over us today via a deception that is more cunning and clever than anyone could ever imagine. 1. Justinian and the Dog Latin deception. A. The secret foreign sign language hidden in plain sight. Dog Latin, the poison in the text. It is a poisonous gloss that corrupts the essence of the text. This story is about simple English text and a hidden text that has been usurped into the English text without you ever being aware of such a deception, causing such a corruption in the text to take on a different meaning than what you ever assumed. This story explains how a foreign alien text appears in contracts, court orders, your driver license, passports, etc., without you ever being aware that such a foreign text existed. This trick played upon the unsuspecting public is administered by the true dogs of the underworld in order to render you as a trustee of a foreign corporate banking entity that is alien and foreign to your true sovereignty. The lawyers, judges, and the courts and their military police are the administrators of this hidden secret deception played upon the masses in order to maintain control of such slaves. Welcome to the Justinian deception. This all-uppercase text is not English or Latin. B. The glossa is the all-uppercase Latin text appearing on any document. It is not English, it is an illustrative text, picture symbol, and not a descriptive text such as English. It has no jurisdiction with other written text such as English descriptive text unless agreed. 2. If it's not English, it's not common law. The poison in the text of the glossa is now identified as Dog Latin and has no correspondence with proper written English appearing on the same page. It is a corruption that can only be agreed to. Samples of how the fraud text appears. This is proper English descriptive text. This is proper written sign language using the grammatical rules of Latin text, identified in Article 11.14.7 of the Chicago Manual of Styles, 16th edition. This text is Dog Latin, being Latin text based on the grammatical rules of English. Notice, no hyphens. This is known as debased Latin, Dog Latin, language of the illiterate, Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. And is noted as criminal under the English Dictionary, identified as a Dog Latin, being a debased form of text. Debased synonyms appear as criminal and immoral and evil and as a counterfeit, along with many more declensions. There is no jurisdiction between two separate languages appearing on one document. This is the guts of their deceptive crime. English and Latin or Dog Latin cannot exist as one jurisdiction. Reference, Article 11.14.7 Chicago Manual of Styles, 16th edition, Foreign Languages. The reason why Dog Latin is used to deceive the public, is because, as a foreign written language, it resembles English text closer than any other written foreign text. It has deceived the best of the best. Even though you assume you can read this text as English, grammatically, it's impossible, and this is how they can claim that their law is a presumption, because it grammatically does not exist. According to the Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition, Dog Latin is the language of the illiterate. It is the Latin all-uppercase text usurped into the English descriptive text, appearing under the grammatical rules of descriptive English text, all-uppercase symbolic text without the hyphens, and not appearing under the true correct grammatical rules of Latin and done in order to deceive the illiterate, being the ignorant masses. Ignorance is negligence. It is the hidden secret that destroys the dominion of living man over the land, the sky, the sea and the thing that creep. Surname. Genesis 1:26. Dog Latin is the Babylonian language of the vassal, being the third party, debtor of the debtor. Vassal of the vessel, it is found on the ledger, tombstones, and by you being attached to it, renders the presumption of confirmation sign that you have sinned and you are dead. You are no longer the servant of the God of living man, you have become the servant of the underworld, the gods of the dead corporation, the servant of the Vatica, the debtor of the debtor, subject to the Justinian corpus juris, language of the dead. The Vatica holds the souls of the dead and the Dog Latin is the language of the dead. Look at any tombstone in the graveyard, its written text is, Dog Latin. The person, and the corporation, exists only in the water world, maritime jurisdiction of the dead. It has no place on land and with the living existence of good men. Land corporations are ships in dry dock, and their fraud Dog Latin language is a crime of deception and fraud against the living man. Check the synonyms of the word debase in your dictionary because Dog Latin is identified as debased Latin, a crime. Dog Latin is the poison in the text, the counterfeit contract, the false charge, the deception that tricks the unsuspecting illiterate ignorant masses into accepting the debts of another. A man cannot live in the sea without a ship, and if you enter into the legal world of commerce, maritime jurisdiction, law of water, you must be able to trust your ship that holds your estate. If your ship is dogged with a corruption, your estate, cargo, is in peril. It may also help if you know the difference between the grammatical rules of the written language of the land and the written language of the sea, or you may find yourself, presumed, lost at sea. The power of Rome is alive and well in the modern systems of governance that govern the citizens of the world today, but is it right? Is it just? Or is it the system of Sita itself, a system of hidden slavery in order to control the masses via a private contracting system in order to forego true justice? Being a system to remove man from the common law of the public jurisdiction in order to subject such a man to fall into private foreign contracts in order to forego common law justice without arousing suspicion. As described in Black's Law Dictionary under Glossa and Justinian. To confirm this, search Glossa and Justinian in the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Power of Rome. The power of Rome in relation to modern-day governance depends on the hidden grammatical rules of a foreign language usurped into the English language without the common man ever being aware of such a deceit. London or Rome? Or Babylon? A question only answered by a comprehension of the grammatical rules of English, and the foreign, Latin, sign language, used as the official written language of the Roman debtor accounts. Language of the debtor. London or Rome? 3. Is England really England? Is England and its city of London really England or the Roman Empire? And if such a choice exists, what official language controls the Vatican if the Vatican holds legal title over England and its so-called Commonwealth subdivisions? Australia and Canada ECT. Is it the English language or is it the official language of Rome, being ancient Latin? Meaning, if you are the holder of any account rendered in ancient Latin, all uppercase symbolic illustrative text, are you just the corporate citizen of Rome and no longer a true common law subject of the common aggregate of England, its subdivisions and the English language? Were you sold out to the foreign Roman military enemy as a trustee slave, or were you ignorant to the greatest grammatical deception ever known in modern history and fell into their trap, deceived by a grammatical masterpiece revived by the Justinian deception and the Roman occult? Occult means hidden. The Latin meaning for Latin is concealed, hidden. The ancient Latin, all uppercase text dogged into dog Latin, is the copyright property of the debtor of the Vatican, the military, Roman Empire, and if you use it, you attach yourself to the terms and conditions of such property of the Roman Empire, being the Babel text of Babylon. You need a license to use it. But is the Latin you see every day on driver license, court documents, banking contracts, government contracts, really true Latin? Or is it the dogged corruption that is neither true English or true correct Latin? If this written text is English and this is proper symbolic sign language Latin, then what is this text without the hyphens, and why is Rome and its legal eagles turning the blind eye? Who benefits from such a corruption? If Rome holds the legal titles of the countries of the world, then it alone is the debtor, but if Rome has the ability to confer the legal title to a third-party debtor, Rome becomes the benefactor of all such countries. This knowledge to confer such legal title, being the debtor of the world, to the unsuspecting masses, is the key to their success. Rome transfers itself from the world debtor to the world creditor via an incredible grammatical deception that you are/were never meant to know. The Latin meaning for Babylon, Babylon, is baby for long time. That's why the infantry of the Roman Empire, United States military, are called infantry. They are the infants, the children that have not grown up and never likely to. At the age of majority, 21, when they are handed their key to life, such children are made sure that they are unaware of their true standing, and for that reason, such children remain holding the Rome military account, surname, being the cognomen, therefore remaining subject to the power of Rome, and their true Christian account, ledger, is never claimed. After 7 years, the child is legally presumed lost at sea and the Christian credit account remains under the control of Rome. The state has become father of the child and the military have become the loyal dogs that serve the state, and that's why their ID tags are called dog tags, because of their military language, dog Latin. What did the child lose? His right to direct the dominion. It remained under the control of the state because the child never claimed it back at the age of majority. That's why the Christian name and the military surname account have two different certificates of birth. The birthing of the credit ledger and the debtor ledger. What one you hold is up to you. If Rome has become the legal title holder of England and its subdivisions, defender of the Christian faith, then have you become the legal third-party title holder of Rome. Being the debtor of Rome evidenced by any account you may be holding with your name glossed into ancient Latin, American Sign Language, or a corrupt version, being the property of Rome or its banking debtor, and appearing in such names or effigies as John Paul Smith or John Paul Smith or Mr. Smith. What foreign text appears on your passport, driver license, bank account, and the list goes on? Is it even Latin or Dog Latin? And if so, maybe you are not aware that a true name can never grammatically appear in illustrative, symbolic text. Illustrative text is a picture, not writing. Grammatically speaking, true proper names are capitalized, not symbolized. Oxford Manual of Styles, rendering the presumption that your own ignorance of the grammatical rules of English and ancient Latin are the root cause of your own inability to know the difference between your true name and a foreign debtor account or ledger of the foreign Roman Empire that you were deceived into holding without your knowledge. Even your own name is made up of two entities, Christian name and surname, that is two not one, and this is even evidenced by two birthing certificates. Birth of the Christian name account, certificate of birth, and the birth of the surname name account, state birth certificate. The only time that the full legal person was birthed, being the name appearing with the Christian name and surname appearing as one in proper English, such as, John Paul Smith, is on the day of registration, not the day you were born, because the date the Christian name was registered was on the registration date some time after you were born, and not your born date. Your true full name is only the Christian name or given name. It is the state that joined the family name to your Christian name, so they are liable for the debts under the full name, John Paul Smith, because it's their property, their copyright, their creation. He who creates owns. One would even wonder why the church itself remained quiet about such a deception. Was it because it was the role of the church to serve Christ, so if Christ never returned, maybe the Vatican, debtor of man, would only need to serve itself? It could render itself as the benefactor if the beneficiary, Christian account, was lost or not present. I wonder why Latin and grammar have been removed from the corporate state school system. Because if you could really read, and you knew your Latin and your grammar, you would see the deception in plain sight. If you were born into fraud and lived your whole life in fraud without ever being aware of such a fraud, then coming face to face with the truth would understandably be a difficult thing to accept. Many will refuse to accept that their own lack of knowledge in relation to grammar is the cause of their own misunderstanding in relation to their own name. Your surname appearing as a symbol, glossa, is assumed. It is not your property and does not appear as a part of your name on any birth certificate. 4. The Justinian Deception 530 AD, Death of Humanity. Justinian Deception. What is the Justinian Deception? Justinian 3. Who was Justinian? Justinian head. 5. Justinian, Emperor of Rome from 527 AD to 565 AD, and the Justinian principle of corporate dead governance of the dumbed-down distracted masses. So why do we shed light on this person? What did Justinian do that changed the history of modern-day governance? It's simple. He understood the meaning of God. He had the comprehension to understand Article 126 Genesis, being the authorization that granted total authority over the world to man, and nothing else, grantor of dominion, being the greatest of authority that was granted to man from the God of the Bible we are all aware of today. God: meaning, grantor of dominion. So there can be many gods to deceive you. All that needs to be done is for living man to give his consent to a dead corporation in order that a dead corporation can access the dominion, total authority, from such a living man. If the man does not consent, then a secret system of deception may have to be created in order to deceive such a man into consent without such a man ever being aware. The secret system exists. Its deception is legal title and its tool is grammar. 6. Trust law, the legal code to modern-day slavery. Article 126 Genius, is the foundation to trust law, and what is trust law? It is the legal code to a master-servant relationship, being slavery, devolution. However, slavery is outlawed, but voluntary servitude is legally accepted. What this means is that the servant, slave, must agree or consent to a private contract of slavery. No one in their right mind wants to be a slave, and that is why the warnings appear in the Bible, warning against the deceptive nature of the serpent snake in the Garden of Eden, because it is through the clever deception of the serpent, being the usurper snake, that trust law has become the new system of slavery, perfected over hundreds of years by the legal minds of deception, the masters of deceit. Justinian Deception. Vatican. 7. Key to conferring the ledger upon the unsuspecting illiterate ignorant masses. The key to their deception is not to send you a bill but to send you their account in order that you agree to become the trustee of their account. That's right. It was never your bill that appears in the mail with your so-called name appearing in the false Dog Latin. It's pure grammar that confirms that proper names are never symbolized, they are capitalized, and when you see Smith and not Smith or the symbol Mr. or Miss, you are looking at the foreign accounts or ledgers of a foreign, Roman, entity sealed in its coffin, envelope or article, waiting for the illiterate ignorant masses to claim their debt property, appearing as a symbol of their account that looks so much like your name, and once you break the seal of the sealed envelope, the spell, contract, within, the contract to pay the debt, will be attached to the ledger that you claimed, rendering their account to be settled by their new consenting debtor, you, being the one that claimed the ledger appearing within such an article or what you assumed was a bill in your name. It was their account. And they needed a fool to hold their ledger, dog it into their dead dog Latin text in order to subject you to the accounts of the underworld. Posting means to confer an account to a ledger. A ledger is the stone on top of a tomb, in other words, you're dead. However, the world of the dead is not all bad. The distractions are entertaining, and to find your way back to Eden is complex and not for the faint-hearted. The world of the dead has footy, porn, television, sports of all kind, things to keep you distracted, things that you love doing on the condition that you keep paying the debts of your master. A lot of people have the best life ever as the slave, and in a way, their masters try to keep them happy and distracted because the wealth that the masters generate from their true dominion, true title, is possibly beyond your comprehension. The masters are not really rich from their own wealth, they are rich from acting as the equitable title holder of your own dominion. 8. Dominion is the hidden authority. Without that one simple article, 126 Genesis, being the granting of such dominion over the land, the sky, the sea and the thing that creep, man would never have any legal ability to govern anything. Such a biblical statute also prevents any form of governance over man, because man has the highest authority over all living things on this world, as well as the authority over the thing that creep. And what is the thing that creep? The legal dead surname, being, in Latin, the name that creeps up from below. 9. Respect for the assize of the Vatican. Only living man holds the highest authority, being dominion, over the natural mineral and energy wealth of Eden, earthland, so man must be assumed dead in the water in order that the serpent, usurper, can claim equitable title over Eden. But remember this, how many men are worthy of holding the true wealth of Eden, mineral and energy reserve, over the Vatican? And that is why the code of understanding in relation to the biblical codes are so complex, in order that only the true learned, the servants of the first grantor of dominion, the first God, comprehends why the serpent or sitter must exist. The serpent, usurper Vatican, only holds authority over its own property, being the dead accounts and the persons of Rome. You can only hold the dead accounts of Rome by holding the Vatican created person. If you hold any account of Rome, you, by your own claim, are the property of Rome, rendering your God as the Vatican, and not the true God, because the Vatican created the person, and when the living man is annexed to the person, such a living man no longer serves the first God of the living existence of man, he serves the grantor of the person, and the life granted to such a person by the Vatican. Only the Vatican created person has the ability to hold a debt account, man has no ability to hold any account. That is why your Christian ledger, dead Christian name, has a trustee, in order that we, man, only need directive powers over the dead governing corporate contractor. It is the Vatican, being the Vatican holder, that granted a life to a person. Man was granted existence, and without existence, there can be no person or life of a trust or contract or anything for that matter. To kill the life of a person does not kill the existence of the man, but if you kill the existence, the person no longer exists, and that is why no man or person has the right to end a man's existence, for such a crime of ending existence is the greatest insult against the highest grantor of dominion. 10. Born into life or existence. Remember this, without existence there can be no life, so when you see the meaning of born, meaning, born into life or existence, it was existence that the first God granted, not life. Life is only the duration of the Vatican created person, being the lifespan of a contract or trust in a legal term. Only the true God can grant existence, whereas the Vatican grants life, but only for the dead person. Hold life and you might very well be existing as dead. Hold life and your God is the Vatican, not the true God. Hold existence, and your God is the true God, that grants real existence, and this may be where the saying, own nothing and direct all derives from. Understanding the Christian name, and its trustee legal standing, and the words, in my name you will be saved, may be the greatest key that returns you to existence. But before you search for your true God, the gods of the underworld and Egypt did offer the dead a life within death, and if you are happy within that existing death, as you hold your person, then think carefully before you search for your real God of existence, because such a road to the truth and the real God is long. The accounts of Rome can only be attached to the property of Rome, being the persons of Rome. A person is not a living man, it is the rank in a society, a military account holder, and by your own actions, by agreeing to hold any form of account, you have agreed to act as the person. Mask, you have agreed to serve the false god, being the god of the person, the god of the pagan, pagan debtor of the Vatica, being the Vatica, the world debtor, the legal title holder of Eden. The Vatica is the beast of burden of man, and by holding any accounts of Rome, you become the servant of the beast by holding the mark of the beast, being dogged, dog Latin. You have left the true God. You hold the dogged, dog Latin text, and you are assumed dead, chattels of the state, chattels of the Vatica, you are the property of Rome. 11. The deception, dog Latin. So what did Justinian do in order to gain so much power and authority over man? He created the greatest deception concept ever perpetrated against living man in modern known history. He killed man without anyone ever knowing that they were all legally dead, sacrificed at birth, dumped into the sea of commercial paper, in order to be salvaged by the Roman Empire before they were ever aware that they were assumed dead, lost at sea and never likely to return. Justinian, Emperor of Rome, and his legal team between 530 and 560 AD created a governmental masterpiece of modern-day deception in order to deceive the public into falling into the private military contracts of the Roman Empire, under the direct control of the Vatican in order to forego true justice. Shortly after the Magna Carta in 1215, Accursius was a Roman jurist, around 1230 in the Host-Orff dynasty of the Roman Empire, had completed the Justinian Glossa Corpus Juris Code, Laws of the Dead Corporation System. Such a system is now fully in play, operating under the all-caps Glossa Latin hidden concealed system of written Latin text, or a dogged version of it, property of Rome, that is assumed as common English text today. However, this is still far from the grammatical facts as confirmed in Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition in relation to the Glossa, and also confirmed by Article 1114(7) of the Chicago Manual of Style 16th edition, identifying American Sign Language, operating under the grammatical rules of Latin text, being used in modern-day governance and private banking contracts. Common law of the land is not gone, but if you hold the person, being the property of Rome and the Vatican, you have no right to be subject to the common law of the land. You have become the property of Rome and you are bound by the Justinian Code, Code of the Dead Contracts, because the person that you hold is not your property, but you are subject to its debts if you are acting as the holder of such a legal person that was granted to you by Rome. The Christian name is also not your property, but it is the remedy because it has a trustee, saving you from death. Trustees are legally dead. Justice is a straight line. Dog Latin is the bending of the line, the corruption, the spurious document, the declension, the debasement, the counterfeit, the immoral act that no positive law could ever follow. It is the clever deception that people assumed this text was English, and that's how you corrected the error in the name. It was never your name in the first place. This deception was right under your nose in plain sight all your life, but because it was always there, you didn't notice it. 12. Translations in relation to the use of Dog Latin. What is Dog Latin? Black's Law Dictionary claims that it is a debased form of Latin text appearing under the grammatical rules of English. It's unreadable, so what does it look like? It simply looks like this. And where do you find it? Well, look at court documents, government documents, banking documents, and your driver license. Yes, all the entities you assumed that you could trust. It exists only with the consent of the ignorant. It is the language of the illiterate. Just to give an example of how dangerous this deception is, I will give you a translation from Dog Latin to English and then from English into correct Latin. In relation to the text used by the U.S. Federal Reserve, the bar, the banking systems and the United Nations, the European Union, EU, such things entities use American Sign Language, being the all-uppercase text in order to identify corporations registered with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, but do they? Or is it the deceptive, Dog Latin? Here is the presumption and the fact in relation to Dog Latin. A sample is given in the Chicago Manual of Styles, in section 1114(7), image below, foreign languages, of the correct way Latin ASL, is to be used in relation to the sample, a car drove by. The translation into ASL, American Sign Language, appears as, vehicle drive by. Did you notice the hyphen? One rest in written Latin and American Sign Language, constitutes a break between the two signs, words, whereas in relation to the English grammatical rules dealing with English text, one rest constitutes joinder between the two words. Two rests or one rest and a full stop constitutes the break in relation to the written English grammatical rules. Two different sets of very different grammatical rules. This means that when Latin or American Sign Language is used without the hyphen, it renders nothing in fact, leaving only an ignorant presumption that such all uppercase text is valid. This is just word science. If you operate English text or Latin text in breach of its relating manuals, you void warranty. Just like operating an automobile in breach of its manuals, you void warranty. 13. Babel text, the language of Babel. So let's translate the cat sat on the mat into the Latin, in relation to Article 11.14.7 of the Chicago Manual of Styles, to see what happens. The cat sat on the mat equals the cat sat on the mat. Now from Dog Latin to English. The cat sat on the mat equals the cat sat on the mat. As you can see, the second sample translated into nothing readable, it's Babel. That's why the second sample is called Dog Latin, or Dog Latin being the language of the illiterate. It is debased. It is a declension or a debase, meaning, it is wrong, immoral, counterfeit and void. It is also the language of the dead ledger, being depicted as the Egyptian god of the dead underworld, Orbis, depicted as a man with the head of a dog in Egyptian hieroglyph symbolism. Dog Latin, the eye of Horus, god of war and the dead, also depicted on the US $1 note, but is that even grammatically correct appearing in Dog Latin? Is this a revival of Egyptian slavery? Let's look at the company registered on the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, District of Columbia, being the registered company, Commonwealth of Australia. The translation from Dog Latin into English text. Commonwealth of Australia equals Commonwealth of Australia. Does it grammatically exist in fact? Notice the full stops after each word. So let's translate the Commonwealth of Australia into correct American Sign Language, under the correct grammatical rules of Latin text. Commonwealth of Australia equals Commonwealth of Australia. There is no all uppercase text constituted in the English grammatical rules. It does not exist, and there is also no unhyphenated strings of SIGs in the Latin or American Sign Language. Article 11.14.7 Chicago Manual of Styles also states that there is no correspondence between the words and signs of any two languages, meaning, the Dog Latin has no jurisdiction with the written English on any instrument, contract, unless agreed. But was your agreement to such a false corruption in such a contract done by consent, or were you deceived by your own ignorance and illiteracy? And why were you never taught grammar and Latin in school? To keep you enslaved by a false debt? One may ask. 14. Secret destructio of common law land government by deception. Are you starting to see the deception yet? The foreign private banks such as the US Federal Reserve, that owns the Commonwealth of Australia account, may not exist in any lawful de jure ability. It is only assumed by the illiterate ignorant that could not read proper English. Why does the Governor General assume office? Because there is no office in fact. Is this how the real governments have been destroyed by the private foreign banking entities? Have they pulled a swifty over the people of the world via a grammatical deception, a trick in the text? A joker card? Is Dog Latin the language of the dog that is always subject to their master, man? Is the dog the slave? Is your driver license your identification that you agreed to be the dog? Are you a Mr. or Miss in the military holding the dog tag written in Dog Latin? Are you legally dead? But you have not worked it out yet. Are you a slave by deception? 15. Adam and Eve, the warning concept of trust law being its real hidden meaning. This concept is not new, it's trust law, and the original warning about such a deception is the first story in the Bible, Adam and Eve. Such a story has all the elements of a trust law arrangement: the usurper, Vatica, and the house of the debtor, tree of knowledge, and the house of the creditor, tree of life. Split title being the concept of trust law, divide and conquer, the warning from God, being the first grantor of dominion to man, warned Adam, man, to stay away from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. House of the debtor, was the fruit the privilege of slavery. The very attachment, annexing, to the fruit of the tree of knowledge, being the house of the debtor, legal title holder, rendered Adam as no longer a man, he became the account holder, trustee, of a dead account of Rome being a dead thing. As God claimed, you will surely die if you eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, being the debtor account of the Garden of Eden, Adam became the legal title holder, losing the equitable title of Eden to the serpent, Vatica, preventing Adam from entering the garden without permission, license, from the grantor of the legal title. Adam was cast into the sea and could only enter back into the garden under license because he was no longer the holder of the equity. He held the knowledge, the notice, the legal title. He held the ledger, being the tomb. He solely legally died. Again I remind though, the very word posting means transferring an account to a ledger, and what is a ledger? The stone that covers a tomb. The holder of the ledger is dead, entombed into the contract, just like God warned Adam, living man. Remember, trust law, true title is split into legal title and equitable title, and if you hold legal title, you don't have rights over the equitable title without license. If you need a license to drive your car, you no longer hold equitable title over your car, evidenced by the fact that you need a license to drive it on public lands. The equitable title belongs to the one who granted you the license, and if your government is a company registered with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, I assume that the United States Federal Reserve private banking system is holding your equitable title to your car, maybe your home, maybe your own country, your own dominion, your own body and all the oil and mineral reserve, dominion, that goes along with it. Did they take it? Or did you give it to them without a fight? 16. Split title, the two birthing certificates. That's why you have two birthing certificates, and also why the bank needs the details of one of them in order to give you legal title, because you may be holding the wrong one. The two birthing certificates are evidence of split title, being a trust agreement, split title, debtor or creditor, the choice is yours and the certificates identify the difference. You can't get the other certificate of birth unless you know your name and date of birth of your Christian account. It's under your nose, again, on your birth certificate. Another disturbing account is the birthing certificates themselves. They are also dogged in dog Latin, rendering them potentially void from the beginning to the end. The signs, certificate of birth, translates to, certificate of birth. As you can see, it's nonsensical. The prima facie certificate, being the certificate of the Christian name, effigy, is dogged in dog Latin. Why, you may ask? Because when they are exposed, it is only your own stupidity and ignorance of the biblical codes and plain old grammar that gave them your equity. You applied for everything, to hold their accounts, so they obliged, as good dog servants do, and gave you what you wanted, legal death. As Eve said, the privilege, being the fruit of the house, tree, of the debtor, tastes good. And credit does taste good, until you miss a payment. Adam's, loss of the equitable title over Eden, the earth dominion, was due to a masterpiece of deception, deceived by the serpent, usurper, the snake. Reptilian, remember the biblical maxim, thou shalt not worship engraved images, or other gods, and when you know your grammar and Latin, you become aware that the all-uppercase text, is grammatically, an engraved image. It is an illustrative text being an Egyptian hieroglyph. The engraved image is not that of the descriptive text of English, it's the dead language of the house of the dead. Tree of knowledge, it even tells you it's dead, engraved it's the language of the ledger. And what is a ledger? The slab of stone that sits on a tomb. When God said that if you eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, as the usufruct, you will surely die, God was not joking. God meant every word. The language of the tree of knowledge being the house of the debtor is the illustrative text, the symbolic language of the dead. Even the word corporation means dead speaking, so how can you be assumed as the living man when you are the holder of the dead accounts of Rome? What does the Christian cross symbolize? It means died. Webster's dictionary symbols, the warnings are everywhere. By holding any form of license you are telling the world that you are dead and you are no longer the equitable title holder of Eden. You are the legal title holder of Eden and you worship the serpent, Satan. You are the servant debtor of the snake. You pay his bills and not even the true God of living man can save you from your adultery for worshipping other gods of the dead. You lost jurisdiction with the first God of living man by holding the dead person and the dead accounts of Rome, being the creation of the serpent. Usurper, God simply stands for grantor of dominion. The grantor is the master, the grantee is the slave servant. Pic 132. In relation to the illustration above, some words are far too dangerous to take for granted. Names, a nomen is a name, the power of Rome, but a surname is a cognomen, not a nomen. A cognomen is Rome, it is not the power of Rome, it is subject to the direction of the nomen, and if your Christian name, nomen, is attached to the cognomen, surname, you become the servant of Rome and lose your directive power over Rome. Why does the Queen of England hold no surname? The property of Rome is not your business. Unless you make it your business. Remember, Adam, the living man, was in the Garden of Eden first. he was the first trustee of the first grantor of dominion, the trustee of existence itself, trustee of the first God of the Bible, and only when Adam was deceived into holding the legal title, by accepting the fruit of the tree of knowledge, meaning notice, did Adam lose his equitable title hold over the dominion. Total authority. Adam was not forced to accept the privilege of acting as the debtor, he accepted the fruit under his own volition and said that it tasted good, but it comes with death, meaning, you cannot be the holder of legal title and equitable title at the same time. One or the other. However, Christ offered a remedy within the dead world of the tree of knowledge, jurisdiction of the debtor. He offered a trustee for your legal Christian account, rendering you as the living man to remain as director of the serpent within the world of the dead. That's why you have two names, both being the property of the dead state, but one has a trustee or a credit ledger whereas the other is the debtor ledger. Every system must have a remedy, but this remedy comes with great comprehension of the nature of such a biblical trust law system and a comprehension of just what God really means. 17. So what is God? In the legal degree, anyone who grants or creates is the God of what he grants or creates. The grantor is the master, and the one who accepts such a grant is indebted, being the slave or servant. Even if you grant a deception, the one who accepts such a deception is obligated because the grantee agreed to whatever the grantor granted. The Vatican, Rome, granted the person, not the first God of existence. God granted existence, not death. If you are a person, your God is not the first God of the living, your God is the second God of death, the serpent. A person is a dead entity, a corporation subject to the engraved world of the dead. The serpent, Vatican Rome, is now the benefactor, being the de facto quasi-holder of the equitable title of Eden and all its mineral and energy reserve, because the true first beneficiary being man has been evicted via deception, lost at sea and assumed to never return, and that is why the secret codes of governance over the masses is kept so hidden in grammatical deceptions such as the Justinian masterpiece. Glossa and its dog Latin deception. The return of the beneficiary would render the benefactor back as the debtor trustee. The Vatican must surrender to the Christian account because the Vatican holds the dead ledger of Christ, and Christ holds the dead ledger of man and existence. The power of Rome is only a grammatical deception. The Vatican is the servant of man via Christ, being no more than an account of man. Man granted legal title over the dominion of Eden to the Vatican, as the debtor, and the Vatican accepted. It is the Vatican's deception that deceived man into becoming the legal title holder of the Vatican, turning man from standing as the beneficiary of existence into the vassal of the vessel, being the debtor of the debtor, debtor of the dead accounts and ledgers of the Vatican. Such a deception was done by a grammatical masterpiece of fraud in order to attach, the living man to the dead accounts of Rome, rendering such a living man as the account holder of the property of the Roman Empire, therefore giving Justinian, Emperor of Rome, total authority over the accounts of Rome were being attached to such a living man, rendering his own standing from beneficiary to trustee of his own account. It was not the man that was under the power of Rome, it was the account that was under the authority of Rome, and because the living man had unwittingly become the holder of such an account, assumed attachment, the man was bound as the assumed trustee of such a foreign account and is obligated to settle the debts of such an account. The dog Latin trustee is the legal dead third-party slave of such a Roman account. Remember this, under the legal meaning of trust, Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition, a trustee has right to be compensated for acting as trustee. However, if you were never aware that you were made a trustee, then were you ever compensated? The Vatican Rome grants their system of mass control by deceit to the empire in order to administer it. The Vatican also has the power to resume such a system in order to end any empire that operates under such a Vatican-owned code. Copyright. If such an empire does not please such a grantor of such a system, in other words, if the serpent, Vatican, doesn't get its cut of what has been plundered by the administrating empire, it may recall its copyrighted system and end such an empire, and may have the right to claim such a legal ability to justify itself. Because Rome owns all persons, even though it doesn't own the man, if the man is attached to the person, then the Vatican will claim the property of the man right along with the person. Rome is now the United States Federal Reserve under the direction of the dog Latin, City of London, so it is assumed. It may hold the Holy Lance of Rome, the lance that divides and conquers, that lance, power of Rome that split Christ into blood and water, creditor and debtor. Blessing the killers. 18. The deception, and how it deceives us by our inability to read common English text. The deception was simple. If a man assumed that his heritage name, Smith, appearing as the foreign glossed account, thing, appearing as the symbolic designation of a thing, Smith, on any paper instrument, and claimed such a name, thing, assuming it to be his own property, then such a living man, in fact, has claimed ownership over a foreign Roman debtor account in the foreign illustrative symbolic text appearing as Smith, and unbeknown to such a deceived living man, he has become the unsuspecting debtor of the property of the foreign Roman Empire. The surname is the property of Rome, not you. Why? Because it appears in the Roman text, Smith, and not as a true noun, Smith. The living man has become the dead account holder trustee of the property of foreign Rome, United States Federal Reserve accounts, subject to the laws and statutes of such a foreign account and without compensation. He has been contrapped, snared, deceived into the savage grasp of the Justinian deception and unwittingly become the account holder of the accounts of the foreign Roman Empire. The Commonwealth of Australia is registered to the United States Federal Reserve via the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, USEC, for good reason. It's linked to the City of London and Rome. The Commonwealth of Australia Company is a foreign account of the Roman Empire, and such registration information is in the public domain. They didn't really hide anything. That's how clever the deception has been. It's your mind that has been programmed to not believe the truth. Get rid of your TV, take it from your home and dump it, or just use it for your own choice of movies or whatever, and start learning your grammar and understanding just what Latin really is. Pick 110. USEC, United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Pick 113. You will notice that any government account relating to power bills, rates bills, water bills, etc., being accounts, are all rendered in the illustrative all uppercase symbolic text known as Latin, and why? They are grammatically telling you that the accounts are foreign and have nothing to do with correct English or even correct Latin. They are the debts of a foreign private administrator. They are not your property. It is the property of the usurper, serpent. Anything rendered in the all uppercase text, such as a name, or a town, or a street, or a suburb, or an address, or a state, or even two or more capital letters joined together without a space, renders a presumption it is not a fact. And this is where the presumption of law derives from. The all uppercase sign language is not written text. It is a picture, an illustration, it is the joker within the document. Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. Pick 131. 19. The danger of the truth. When you start looking for the truth, you will confront the reality of just how corrupt and dogged our system has become. You will be subject to brutal attacks from the serpent, because you are the real beneficiary of Eden, but the quasi-counterfeit will not let go without a fight, and probably a fight to the death. Beware of these loyal dogs of the Justinian deception. Their rich life depends on your slavery and your lack of ability to see the Justinian deception in full swing. The Kennedy kill, the 9/11's murder of thousands of people, the causing of world war in order to sell arms and run drugs, causing massive debt and hardship at the cost of your lives and the lives of our children for nothing more than profit. These people stop at nothing to keep hidden the deception they need in order to hold such corrupt power over the right to control the treasury of the people. You will be cast as a terrorist or sovereign citizen, being things that make no sense legally but will be tacked to you in order to discredit your stand for the truth. Your goodwill is their enemy, your quest for the truth undermines their fraud and their deception. This truly is a sad situation for good people, and once you become aware of how utterly corrupt and dogged the system is, you then must live with such disturbing knowledge but not having the ability and might to correct it. To make a stand for what is right may lead to nothing but humiliation and even death. I myself have now been subject to threats against the well-being of myself and my children, and I fear for our well-being. This document is all I have left in order to explain the dander I have faced for the research undertaken in order to discover the grammatical crime employed by such counterfeit deceptive corporate administrative entities passing themselves off as true common law governments of the people. It is the fraud in the beginning that renders such a fraud to the end. Such all uppercase symbolic text is only assumed to be the written fact because we, living man, have become stupid and ignorant and dumbed down to the point where we cannot ever read proper English. But not really, we have been indoctrinated, programmed from the day we were born, birthed into a fraud, and we have never known any better. It's only when we start to feel things are wrong within our natural bodies, within our hearts, that some of us start to look deeper into what is causing so many people to wonder, what is wrong with our system? When you notice the rates bills, power bills, court bills, all state entities bills appear in the mail, they are not bills. They are accounts. They are not even domestic accounts. They are foreign accounts, and it's only when you claim such an account by opening such an envelope that houses such an account, you become the claimant of such a foreign account appearing within. It's only after you have claimed such an account appearing in the mail, does the account become your bill. Why? Because you agreed to act as their account holder. And why? Because what you assumed to be your name or street, or town or your address, was in fact the foreign designation of a foreign assumed account, and by your actions relating to you opening and claiming the mail, did you become the assumed account holder of such an account. The all uppercase text was not even proper English. But you were never told. Accounts are things and things are rendered in the sign language, all uppercase text. The big question is, who sent you the account? Was it your true government? Or was it a private quasi-foreign corporate shadow government that we know nothing about? Hidden in their dogged deceptive language. Accounting is the art of cunning, of conferring debt titles upon the unsuspecting. The all uppercase text is just a legal title that renders you as the trustee of such a title. You must settle the debt if you have claimed ownership trusteeship over such a debt account. The greatest deception that people of today refuse to believe is that this type of all uppercase text is not English, and this type of text is English. The great difference is that this all uppercase symbolic type of text is totally foreign to the English language and has different grammatical rules to the English language, and if you are not aware of such a difference between the grammatical differences between the two languages, English and Ancient Latin, American Sign Language, Re. Article 1114-7 Chicago Manual of Styles, and the difference between their different grammatical rules, you will fall for the deceptive trappings of the foreign accounts of Rome, City of London and the United States Federal Reserve, all foreign corporate accounts. You become the citizen of Rome, the debtor trustee of the Vatican. You are no longer the living man with common law rights, you are the dead legal fiction, ripe for plunder by the emperors of Rome in order to rape and plunder its own citizens. You are no longer a townsman or a countryman or civilian, you are a foreign citizen being the trustee to Rome, the world debtor. The very word city is an abbreviation of the City of London, being the square mile in the middle of London. Terrorism. 20. Who are the terrorists really? Is the new style of militarized police bordering on terror in order to terrorize the citizen to comply and not question their own courts, police, government officials, and its actions in relation to ever-increasing debt and poor mismanagement, etc., or even theft of the treasury of the people? Is it okay to ask who owns your own government? Tyrannical governments are organized terrorists' entities. Pick 123. 21. Article 1114-7 of the Chicago Manual of Styles, 16th edition. This, picture below, is one of the many bits of evidence, the written hard evidence that identifies the all uppercase text as a foreign entity, a foreign language to the English written text, and goes on to confirm that there is no correspondence between the sign language and the language of the written text. Not only does it confirm that there is no jurisdiction between the two written styles of text, it further identifies the grammatical error in all government and court and banking documents relating to the grammatical rule dealing with the sign language relating to hyphens between signs in order to string a sentence in sign language. One rest in relation to sign language constitutes a staple between the signs, whereas one rest in written English constitutes the joinder between the two words. Two rests are needed to confirm the staple between words appearing in written English text, whereas only one rest will cause the staple between words appearing as signs. Article 1114-7, Chicago Manual of Styles, 16th edition _see illustration below. These are also the rules re. Ancient Latin, being an illustrative text, meaning symbolic text or sign language, and renders a very different grammatical rule to the written descriptive English text. Such grammatical rules can only confirm that your Christian name and all uppercase surname have no jurisdiction with each other, in a legal sense, unless agreed by the two parties. But if you were never aware of such hidden knowledge that deceived you into assuming that the two names were one, and you entered into a private foreign contract without you being aware, how could such a contract ever be deemed valid? Unless you were never made aware of who you really were until the day your body really did die. Deceived and denied from birth until death, your first God-given rights that were granted to you when you were born were never known to you or hidden from you all your life. What appears to be happening is that terror is now being used by such de facto corporate foreign governing contractors, in order to enforce corporate governance upon the people. People that question any part of the system meet face to face with a very different government than what they assumed existed. Terrorizing the masses into a submission of servitude may be effective, but is it right, and will it work in the long haul? But always remember, it's what we don't know that scars us, and what you do know about their deception scares them. Once the light is turned on, you can see your way through the dark. The owl can see in the dark. You must be like the owl, know the foundation of your own standing and see the weakness in their own foundations of deception. If banks profit on the selling of debt and the corporate governments are a subdivision entity of such a foreign bank, Commonwealth of Australia and Canada registered to the foreign ASEC, then is that not a conflict of interest when the government causes outrageous amounts of debt upon the people of a country because such a de facto government is owned by the bank that needs to sell outrageous amounts of debt in order to make such an outrageous amount of profit? Our governments are all registered to the foreign United States Federal Reserve Banking System, RE, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Pick 129. Meaning of gloss, disguise, mask. The word person derives from mask. Take notice in section 2 of the meaning of gloss. The gloss, like the Latin meaning of Latin, means hidden, mask, camouflage, disguise. Words that identify the all uppercase gloss a text as something in disguise, something hidden, a smoke screen. Something spurious. In other words, you are being told that something is not right when you see such all uppercase foreign Latin text like this. It's you that must be vigilant because the people that operate such a text have already knowingly sold their souls to such a deception and crime. Gloss. Chicago Manual of Styles, Foreign Languages. The sign for a car drove by is vehicle drive by. The Chicago Manual of Styles is the one book that is used by the United States corporate banking system. Enforcement military arm of Rome. All banking paper and instruments must be rendered as a fiction and must never exist in fact. It is you that agree to accepting their fiction in order that they are never held accountable for the crimes you have committed by accepting such a crime against the living man and the laws of grammar and God. You served a foreign state. If you were ignorant to the rules of English, you only have yourself to blame because ignorance of the law is no defense and the real laws are only the rules of the language used within the account you agreed to hold and the laws of God. If you don't know your own God or don't bother to research who your real God is, you may be serving and following the rules of a false God. If you were aware of what the New World Order, maritime jurisdiction, government did to you in order to acquire your consent, you would never trust the government, the media, the police and the courts again. They are all one thing that maintains a massive grammatical deception over your mind in order to keep you under Vatican control. One world government or the so-called New World Order can only appear under the water law of corporations, operating under the copyright of the written language of the Vatican or a total corruption of such a language, and if you become the citizen of a private corporation operating under such maritime rules of such a corporation, you are no longer a civilian of the land. You are overseas presumed dead. If you don't know who you are or your real name, you will be assumed lost at sea, giving Rome and the Church the right to salvation, you and plunder your estate, being your God-given dominion. But as Christ claimed, only in his name shall you be saved. You do have a Christian name for that very reason, but not when you attach your given Christian name to the foreign accounts of Rome, being the mark of the beast, Latin all uppercase text. That's why you have two state birthing certificates. One is the birth of the surname account, born date, and the other is the birth of your Christian name account, registration date. The choice is yours but only if you are aware that there is a choice. Such a choice appears in Adam and Eve, house of the debtor and the house of the creditor. 22. Warning, to the good people of the world. In reality, if you discover the key to the fraud of the private banks and the Vatican and their foreign counterfeit written language, Latin, you will come face to face with the worst type of corporate greed and such people that serve such a massive deception over the people of the world. Such corporate citizens will go to any length to uphold such a system of deceit and sometimes may go to extreme levels of terror in order to uphold your compliance to such a corrupt deception. Truth and right is not an easy road to travel, so think carefully before you learn the Justinian deception, but if you are honorable and understand the role of the beast of burden, Vatican, and avoid interference with the underworld of Sita, the gods of the dogs, Orbis, and the underworld god, Horus, you may be forgiven or survive, but be careful. These gods of temptation and deception are powerful gods and their trustees, being the dead corporations of the sea, may go to extreme lengths to maintain the greatest deception ever. 23. Warning to the industrial military complex. When a dog bites the hand of his master, the trust is gone. 24. The 7-year search, conclusion. In relation to the maxim, glossa viperia ist quie corridit viscera textus 11 Coke, 34. It is a poisonous gloss which corrupts the essence of the text. It has taken me 7 years to find the poison in the text. The answer is, Latin identified in Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, Latin, the language of the illiterate, being, Latin text based on the grammatical rules of English. In relation to the English dictionary, Latin is debased Latin, and is criminal, immoral and constitutes a counterfeit. 25. Credits. Special thanks to the wonderful supporters to this dangerous undertaking. Special thanks to Anna Maria von Reitz for her confirmation by her legal team in relation to such research and for her dedication for her love of humanity. Special thanks to Rohan Lauria for his dedication and left field thinking in solving very large parts of this amazing deception, without his belief that there was also something strange about the all-uppercase text, as I assumed. Without his amazing left field mind, I truly believe that this deception would never have been uncovered. I defined the search to one book, the Chicago Manual of Styles, and when I saw the nearly 1,000 pages, I almost gave up. How do you find something that you don't know what you are looking for? I went away for 2 hours, and when I returned, Rohan walked in and said, I found something in the Chicago Manual of Styles that identifies the all-uppercase text as a glosser, and from that find, we found Justinian, of 530 AD, and the glosser that now gave us the ability to place a name with the all-uppercase text. The glosser was not the corruption, even though it had no jurisdiction with the English text appearing on court and government instruments. The corruption was the poisonous glosser, not the glosser itself, and 12 months later Rohan found Pig Latin, but it was a corruption of the English text and didn't seem to be a corruption of the Latin text. However, that did lead to uncovering other corrupt texts, and undertaking such research into such other corruptions. I finally found Dog Latin, being the final crack to the corruption of the essence of the text. Dog Latin, being Latin text based on the grammatical rules of English, rendering the legal identification of debased Latin. The word debased explains it all: corrupt, criminal, immoral, wrong, a disgrace, a dishonor. It is the counterfeit. Rohan has also suffered police abuse, beatings and threats to his well-being, and no longer enters Queensland for fear of his life. Special thanks to my daughters that have witnessed a brutal attack and terrible threats on their father, myself, by some members of the Queensland Police and the Queensland Justice Department. Being a man that has never done anything criminal for nearly 60 years, a man that has only ever wanted what was right and proper from governments. My girls have suffered along with me terrible threats and attacks from such members of the Queensland Police. However, I am also thankful for other members of the justice system such as Magistrate Pider and Magistrate Spencer and Magistrate Pearson for upholding the system and for their understanding in relation to what our family is experiencing. This research was not undertaken for the hate of corporate governance, it was done for the love and concern of humanity and for the well-being of people. Special thanks to the small group of people, my friends, that have also been there by my side for moral support while I face the courts, face the many imprisonments and arrests and beatings and druggings and the threats to the well-being of my family and myself. You all know who you are, and whatever happens, I am indebted to your moral support. Without you being by my side when facing courts and imprisonment and such threats, I would probably not have made it this far. So the research undertaken and the final outcome of such research truly belongs to us all. Special thanks to the Vatican for, even though very hidden, giving a remedy in the Christian name, in order to be alien from the gods of the underworld. I have not received remedy, however, I can see that it was meant to be, and strangely enough, the code of remedy does exist. Download this document before it is taken. I can no longer be on Facebook or social media due to threats by Queensland Police and the Justice Department. This research will probably be hidden in time, and I am not even sure that the world wants to be saved or released from such a deception. It serves a lot of internally powerful people too well. For the love of people and humanity, the deception is Dog Latin, being the corruption in the text. The all-uppercase foreign text is the Dog Latin appearing as the cause of the counterfeit fraud. The act of usurping Dog Latin into English written instruments in order to deceive the public into surrendering the treasury, is evil and dumb work. The code of deception has been cracked. Vatican control over the underworld via the Justinian deception. Format audio. Leave a comment on Vatican fraud, the power of Rome. Dog Latin, foreign corporate governments and the Dog Latin effect. The poison in the gloss. The science of English, grammar, may overrule all presumptions. False impressions. 1. This is an interesting insight into how foreign, private corporate governments are deceiving the people of the Western world into a not guilty plea when the guilty plea may be the only grammatically correct thing to do. It appears that this governing system is meant for the ignorant and illiterate in order to control such masses. No matter how much we try and fight the system for its crimes against you, if you are ignorant to the grammatical rules of the written text used on documents, you will never beat such a system. You have been dogged by the Egyptian dogman symbol, Orbis, Egyptian gods of the underworld. Orbis, Orbis, one of the gods of the underworld, in charge of preserving the body on the slim chance that the dead come back to life. The Dog Latin text is found on the tombstones of a grave. Dog Latin is the engraved image on the tomb, the written text of the dead. It is debased Latin, appearing as a written sign language without the hyphens. Written sign, subject to the grammatical rules of Latin, appears in all uppercase text like this. 2. This concept is in relation to the Dog Latin find, being the debased Latin text appearing on governmental documents. It very well may work like this. 3. Dog Latin, Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. Inline image 2. 4. Proper Latin, sign, appears in this hyphenated format, under the correct grammatical rules of Latin text, identified in the Chicago Manual of Styles, 16th edition, Foreign Languages, 11-14-7, sample given. Pic 129. 5. When this type of all uppercase text appears on a document being what appears to be Dog Latin, Latin all uppercase text appearing under the grammatical rules of English, such a text does not destroy the vitality of such a document. Refer to Grammar Falsa non vitate chartam, Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition, below. It is saying that the document is what it is in its grammatical standing, meaning that the document is grammatically saying nothing when it is appearing in Dog Latin. The fact stands as stating that the bad grammar does not destroy the documents, it renders such a document as it grammatically stands. Another way to look at it, its true correct grammatical meaning is telling you that such a document is what it is not destroyed. Such a document containing Dog Latin, Babel, is simply saying nothing as it factually stands. If the writer constructs a bad grammatical document, the document is not bad, it appears as it grammatically appears, and is a reflection of the poor ability of the bad writer of such a document. When Commonwealth of Australia appears on paper as Commonwealth of Australia, the grammatical fact is saying that its translation into English appears as Commonwealth of Australia and not Commonwealth of Australia. Notice the full stops. Only an ignorant false impression would render such a presumption as the true correct, Commonwealth of Australia. This will apply to all nations. Be aware that a clever grammatical writer may have the grammatical ability to write a document that gives a false impression of something that grammatically does not exist in fact. Such a false impression tendered as something other than what it truly is, could be deemed as a counterfeit. A counterfeit is simply the act of passing something off that is false for something that is real. Grammar falsa non vitate chartam. 6. So where is the deception, one may ask, when it's not in the grammar? The deception relates to the false impression that a document appearing in Dog Latin is something other than what it truly appears to be. If the reader assumes such a document to be something other than the grammatical fact, then such a reader's ignorance to English grammar is his own downfall in defining the grammatical facts appearing on such a document. The grammatical standing of the document is always what it is, one's ignorance is one's downfall. Ignorance is no excuse in law, and if you ignorantly assume that you can read, when in fact your grammatical ability may be poor, then you may be in danger by being subject to the grammatical ability of those that have such a grammatical ability that possess an immoral intention in order to deceive the ignorant masses into assuming such a false document to be true. As you can see, it's never the fault of the document itself, the fault appears with the ignorant perception of such a document. Who would have ever assumed that this type of all uppercase text was not English? People have become so ignorant that they will ever argue the point that this text is English, and why? Because they can read it. However, grammatically, it can only be signed, it's American Sign Language, without the hyphens, rendering it to be Dog Latin. Why courts love the not guilty plea. 7. If the courts and the enforcement agencies of such courts start to enforce the wrong presumption of a grammatical fact of a document, then the court is making the error, as long as it knows that the defendant is ignorant of such an error. So the court needs a not guilty plea in relation to a grammatically dogged document in order to safely proceed without risk. The not guilty plea is your ignorant acceptance of the error confirmed by your acceptance that you intend to defend. The plea of not guilty is the consent that you agree to the false presumption of the content of the charge sheet and you agree to defend the presumed charge. The charge, dogged in Dog Latin, grammatically does not exist. However, if you understood the true grammatical appearance of such a document, your guilty plea is simply saying that you are guilty to nothing, because, grammatically speaking, the charge never existed. 8. If you are forced to act as a defendant against your will and then make the plea as guilty, or guilty to the fact, then the court must determine if the one pleading is aware of the grammatical standing facts of the document, because a Dog Latin court charge is grammatically, in fact, saying nothing, there is no charge, so a guilty plea is an agreement to a document that has no charge appearing. Why? Because it's been poisoned by the poisonous gloss that corrupts the essence of the text, Dog Latin. But what is the danger for the court? Such a court is tendering, dealing with or passing off, a false document. That is criminal, that is uttering. Attached, Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. This type of conduct is found more in relation to foreign private banks acting as governments and police, when in fact, they are not. Such private banks acting as government are de facto or counterfeit governments. Uttering. 9. The only way the court can proceed to charge you with anything is that you agree to the false impression of such a charge, because the charge sheet document grammatically becomes the fact that there is no charge. Refer to deception, attached, Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. Deception. 10. The deception relates to someone attempting to deceive another person in relation to a false presumption other than the fact. If the grammatical facts state that a charge sheet from the court dogged in Dog Latin grammatically states nothing, but the court attempts to portray a false presumption in relation to such a document that states nothing, then the deception is from whoever owns the court. If you are aware of the grammatical facts relating to such a charge, or you are forced to deal with such a document that you know that is grammatically stating that there is no charge because it is dogged, corrupted, then the court, state, is then at fault and stands as the criminal for enforcing a false presumption. Uttering a forged document. 11. Re. The grammar falsa non vitate chartam, above. There is no corruption of the document, it is simply stating that the document is what it is, its grammatical meaning hides nothing, its grammar is telling you everything. Re. The true grammatical fact. Its true grammatical standing. In fact, the document hides nothing, but your own ignorance causes your lack of ability to see the deception relating to the false impression you have of such a document. 12. So where is the deception? Re. Deception, attachment. The deception is the false impression other than what the document is grammatically appearing as. The corruption and deception relates to the wrong impression of the true correct grammatical facts. The document is what it is, but the one who deceives is the one who is attempting to create a false impression to the grammatical true facts. Such a person is the one taking the risk that the masses are unaware that this type of Dog Latin foreign text was neither Latin or English. Dog Latin has no jurisdiction with either Latin or English if appearing on the same document with Latin text or English text. 13. If this is organized, such as an entity that enforces the false impression of a fact, being a fraud, then such an organization could be classed as a racketeering organization, taking lands, things, property and money from people under a false presumption and backed up by threat, intimidation, torture, etc. Such crimes attract 20-year imprisonment to life sentences. If the foreign state police service is a private organization registered to D&B, being a foreign entity, that is hard to find and operating its courts and charges under a Dog Latin deception in order to charge people for rights that already exist, such as freedom to travel in an automobile on public lands, then are all people involved with such an entity criminal racketeers subject to life in prison or 20 years. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Racketeering. Racketeering U.S. Code 1962. Is this for limited liability? 14. So what is limited liability? This is where the state has conferred the presumptions, in a trust format, to the office holders of the state, such as the police and the judges. The judge is paid a lot of money because it is with his liability, relating to his legal training and grammatical ability to deceive you, on behalf of the foreign private company he serves, that enables him to hold that office with success. The liability is no longer with the state when the judge has agreed to hold the office of deception. The judge should be skilled enough in order to identify a man that knows the grammatical facts of a document, in order that such a judge knows when to back away from attempting to confer a false charge upon someone, and if such a judge pushes such a matter by force, or threats or intimidation, it is with such a judge that the liability will lie. The grammatical standing of the document he is trying to deceive you with will never change. It becomes the evidence of the deception, if the one who is being charged sees the grammatical problem where the police racketeering organization have attempted to tender such a dogged instrument, Dog Latin. The judge can burn the police or illegally and unlawfully burn the one who is aware of the fraud deception. If the judge makes the mistake, liability will fall on him and the state may be unharmed, limiting the liability from the foreign state he serves, being the first grantor of the deception. A good judge will know when to back down if the grammatical facts are endangering the false impression of a charge that does not grammatically exist. As you can see, any document housing the Dog Latin all uppercase hyphenated text is appearing with two distinct different languages, rendering translation to be needed. Not only that, but there is no jurisdiction between the two languages appearing on such a document. If the written charge or the name or any part of such a document appears in all uppercase text, that is the sign that such all uppercase text is rendering something spurious. The fact that Dog Latin is debased Latin renders such text as criminal, immoral, and as a counterfeit. If you are not aware of the difference of this text, and this text and this text, then you are as good as dead. This is the director and this is the administrator and this is the debtor trustee being the ledger. A ledger is the slab on a tomb, and Dog Latin is the text on the tombs in the graveyard. Summing up. 15. The deception is to plunder the sovereign state, by making you believe that you are still the state, but while they have conferred a false foreign debt ledger, trust appearing in a name that looks like you, upon you without your understanding, then plundering their account ledger, that looks like your name that you are unwittingly holding as the legal trustee, giving them the legal ability to plunder the mineral and energy assets to your sovereign state. This is done by offering you the sealed ledger, sealed in an article, in a foreign Dog Latin language that you have assumed to be common law English, when in fact, such a written text is neither English or the official language of the Vatican, being Latin. The moment you unseal, such an article, you become the holder of a foreign private account ledger, and you are no longer assumed as the aggregate of the sovereign state, you become the trustee of their foreign ledger that looks like your name, rendering your sovereign state as the surety of their ledger that looks like your name that has been dogged into Dog Latin, that you are unwittingly holding as the trustee of a foreign state and no longer the aggregate of your own sovereign state. Deceived by your own ignorance of grammar. 15b. Dog Latin is a third-party text, now known as Dog Latin, attached, being an immorality, a debased declension of the real version of Latin. Grammatical rules of Latin and English states that grammatically, Dog Latin is what it is, being nothing but an immoral act. Dog Latin. And the standard English version of Dog Latin. Dog Latin stated. 16. Dog Latin is a debased form of Latin, so look at the meaning of the word debased in the standard dictionary. Words such as criminal and corrupt appear. If Dog Latin appears on government or police and court documents, then is the grammatical fact stating that such documents are corrupt and criminal, subjecting such a court, their police and government as a racketeering criminal corrupt entity. Debased Dog Latin. 17. Now you see how important is it that corporate foreign governments of the New World Order must hide the grammatical and Latin knowledge from the masses. Knowledge of grammar and Latin may open your eyes to the facts of what is really happening right under your nose. 18. So it may not be the glossa, symbolic text, that is the problem, it may be the poisonous gloss that corrupts the real meaning of the text, being Dog Latin, the debased form of Latin that uses the English grammatical rules that gives us the false impression that this type of text is English when in its true grammatical fact, it is nothing. Justice, justice melts away into nothing. Glossa. https://justduodeceptio.wordpress.com
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.